Hi, I'm Alison Ellis here with Maricela Eamon. Hi, Maricela.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Good to see you again. We are back again for another weekly check-in on employee safety during weddings and pandemics. This is our life now. So we want to talk to you about how do you keep your employees safe. And by the way, that means you, if you are a solopreneur and the only person who works at your company, how do you keep you safe? So we want to talk a little bit about that. We've been talking about it for a couple weeks now, for sure, but we wanted to really drill down on the importance of making your plan so that you can keep your employees safe. So the things we want to touch on today include your plan, communication of your plan, preparedness, actually being ready to execute your plan, the training that goes involved, right? And then the legalities that you might want to consider as we move forward. So I want to throw it to Maricela to touch on this employee safety aspect, the importance not only of having the plan, but having a plan that might even go beyond the state guidelines or the national guidelines that we may have.
Well, yes, thank you for the nice introduction there. But something that I have been focused in talking about too with other vendors in the industry here in VT is about how you kind of move forward with a plan after you've already decided to write it, or you've downloaded the one that I provided and you adjusted that one. It's like, how do we move forward past that? Moving forward past that is really focusing your preparedness plan to how you're going to address your employee safety. And this is mostly focused around your venues who have staff, your caterers or your bar services, anyone that has individuals that help them. But again, like you mentioned, it does also focus on those solo individuals who do it on their own, is really having a plan for how you take care of your number one employee.
Yeah, your number one. You know, the thing is if this happens to be your first time tuning in to us doing one of these safety updates, Maricela has this great preparedness plan. I'll make sure there is a link somewhere in and around this video for you, and you can download it for free. And it's her plan that she's using, that she created for her business moving forward. You can modify it, right? Just like anytime you buy a done for you template, right? You need to modify it. So this is a free plan that you can then modify for yourself. So I'm going to raise my hand as a solo business owner and say, I haven't even actually done this yet, right? I've been talking with you, Maricela, for weeks, right? I know it. I know your plan, right? But I still need to actually sit down and put it together for me, because what I know and what I'm going to communicate to people are different things. Mm-hmm. What I know, I can't just download into somebody else's brain so they understand what I understand. I have to put it in writing and have my plan for me so that I know what I'm willing to say yes to, what I'm willing to say no to, what's a deal breaker, right? So I just want to say, for anybody out there, I'm calling you out. I'm with you. You might have downloaded her plan, but still not actually cut and pasted it together for yourself. So do that. Now's the time.
Even if you've moved every single one of your events to next year, we don't know when this is going to be over. And obviously, if it happened, and it's happened in the past and it happened now, there is always a chance for new diseases, new infections and bacteria and viruses to be out there that we need to be on the lookout for. Right. So if you have something for your business operations already tucked away for the future, we're not hitting this brick wall when this comes around and fully shutting down. You know how to attack it, I guess you could say, if you're able to move forward with providing services for events in the future. So having it that tucked away, you're not scrambling to get it done later on.
That's right. So she is saying, for complete clarity, you need this plan for 2021 too. This plan doesn't expire just because you don't have an event on the calendar until November or December or January, right? So get this plan together. You can continue to modify it, but this is not something to wait on, because when people inquire for 2021 or are asking you for help or advice, particularly if you're a venue, a planner, right? You have to have your plan for now so that you know what you're willing to agree to maybe next year, or what you need to warn your clients to think about for next year, because according to your plan, XYZ, right? And so based on our plan, these things need to be true in order for us to do that 150 person event in June, or whatever it is for you. Mm-hmm. So I'll let you dive into some of these points here with the plan.
So once your plan is set, or at least you have that foundation of something that is really tailored to your services and the way that you run your operations, you're able to communicate that with your employees if you have them. And letting them know what you're going to be doing, or what to adhere to, or even just what to expect, it's going to give them the opportunity to either feel more comfortable about moving forward and working with you on these events this year, next year, or it even allows them the opportunity to decide not to. There is a risk level there, and I think this is that, again, bringing in that compassion piece. It's like understanding that some people are not going to want to move forward, just like your clients. Some of them decided not to move forward this year. Your employees may also make that choice.
That's right. And when you have the plan, you can communicate to them so then they can decide in an informed way. They don't have to be saying, no, I won't work, just out of fear because they don't know what the plan is. Or they can make an informed, no, I won't work, because they do know what the plan is, right? So they can decide for themselves, or at least when they do get to work, which I know you'll talk about communicating this plan, training people, but then you have some way to lead them, because you don't want to be trying to lead without a plan.
Absolutely. And in that communication, and you said the training aspect, but in the communication and the plan, you do have to have a very specific training plan, not only meeting the VOSHA training piece that is required for businesses, but and possibly updating on your ServSafe as well, because they do have specified COVID training for individuals, and I believe they're all still free, which is great. You have to train them on your process. If it's brand new, especially, a lot of businesses are needing to fully restructure their operations. And even though you've had maybe employees for the last 10, 12 seasons, you're in a whole new world at this point. And so you're going to have to start a little bit over. Having a comprehensive plan, and then a comprehensive training plan on top of that as well, so that you can have your employees take this, whatever it may be. It could just be something online, preferably that they can download a document going through your new step process, Zoom meetings, addressing these issues. Anything that you can do to prepare them ahead of time would be fantastic.
Yep. Answering their questions. Figuring out, your employees are often going to have a great question that makes you say, oh, we didn't consider that. Let's add that to the plan, right? So you got to have the open communication.
Absolutely. And when you're working on your training plan and on the information that you're going to be providing your employees, you have to make sure that you're always meeting what is required by HR or workforce, the labor department. Just make sure that you're up to date on all those aspects as well. So if there are certain things that you have to meet for your county, your state, that has to be included. Things like, so a big one is, for me, is making sure that you make it clear what constitutes for termination if somebody is not willing to uphold or meet the need for those guidelines on the day of an event. You need to address these issues with your HR consultant or management manager to see what is appropriate for you and what's inappropriate for your state or your county as well. Talking about when you do that, when you do talk to someone in HR about this, you need to also address things like health screenings and maintaining records regarding all of that, because it has to meet your HIPAA requirements on that as well, which have changed due to COVID and the need to do these health screenings at the start of the day, or in the case of an event, is what we're calling is like prior to stepping on site.
Okay. So when people realize there are more, I don't want to say hoops because it's layers of protection, like hoops seem unnecessary, but now we have more layers of protection, right, for how we're going to show up safely for work. When we were just chatting right before we started recording, you were saying, you know, as someone who's worked in hospitality, you have shown up for work not well in order to, you know, put on the happy face and get the work done. Now we really don't want people doing that, right? So even just that mindset has to change from that sort of working hospitality mindset. If we're not well, you're not welcome. Don't come here, right? Show up.
Don't show up. You're doing us a favor by not coming into work. Just let us know that you're not going to be here.
That's right. They'd rather you leave them high and dry and COVID-free than show up sick, right?
Absolutely. And that kind of leads into thinking about your work schedules. How are you going to be scheduling your staff so that it minimizes the amount of exposure that they get? You know, when you're now, you know, obviously in the restaurant industry, a lot of times now the majority of your services are all takeout or outdoor seating, which is a little bit different, and you're minimizing your employee contact, your front of the house staff, with as much as possible with the general population. How are you going to do that in events if you have 3 events in a weekend and you're already short-staffed? So you need to really consider those items, because if somebody, like the example that I gave a friend of mine, is if you have 3 events in a weekend, event on Friday has 25 people, an event on Saturday has, you know, another 50 people, and then another 50 on Sunday. That staff person that was there all 3 days was just now exposed to 125 people.
Right.
So we had to take those things into consideration. Staggering is a great way to do that. Limiting workload. So maybe you have a setup crew that also comes back and then tears things down, but then the people just providing the service at that time are also, you know, limited on their time frame there. So you're not over exhausting them and putting them and exposing your entire crew at the same time. So things to really consider, and to work with someone. If you do have an HR management company, you know, really looking into that, or someone that can provide you additional insight on what your best practices when it comes down to employee safety are moving forward.
Yeah, that scheduling piece is a really important one, and it won't be easy for people to navigate in some ways. But, you know, for example, you could have a Friday and a Sunday crew, you know, and a Saturday crew is different, or like you said, have it split. But just even thinking about that, that's part of that plan that you need to have, where you set your own rules, right? Because right now, so when we did our first safety video a whole 2 weeks ago, things were very different than they are right now, where, you know, we did our first little video together. We did a live stream. And while we were live, the governor was like, we can have bigger events, right? All of a sudden we got some guidelines. Then now we are 2 weeks later, and some states are rolling back. States that opened are rolling back. States that were about, like New Jersey was about to have indoor dining, they said, you know what, let's not. So we have to be prepared that things could reverse, things can change at any time. And while it was 2 weeks ago, hey, you could have 75 people inside or 50% capacity, and you could have 150 outside under, you know, all the way outside. It can't be, you know, you can't have 4 sides. In theory, then you could have, you know, 75 people 7 days a week going through your venue. And is that really what we want to do?
That's really up to you. I would say no.
Right?
I would recommend not to, but that's really up to each person's comfort level and what they're able to do and accomplish in regards to keeping, you know, everybody safe. Be yourself, anyone who comes into your venue as a guest or a patron, your employees, and then the general population, because these employees especially are going to be going into the general communities. And if they did contract something from an event, they're now spreading it around their neighborhoods and so on. And you don't, that's, something that you definitely want to avoid. We don't want super spreading events.
We don't. No. And that's why just because it's allowed, it doesn't mean it's a good idea, right? Just because technically you could have 75 people a day, 7 days a week, doesn't mean you should. And why you need to have your own plan, because that's when you sit down, just like when you did your business plan, when you opened your business, or when you finally realized you needed a business plan and you'd been in business 10 years and you did your business plan. But whatever, once you do that, you have answers. You feel a sense of understanding of what you're doing, what's your mission, what's your focus, how do you move forward, what do you need, what resources do you need, which I know is going to be part of the preparedness that you're going to touch on. So that is what it comes down to, right? It's like, you need the plan so you can fill in all these blanks. How many events, how many people, how do you rotate the staff, and what does preparedness look like for you so that you can be prepared?
Yeah, definitely. And in that, once you have this plan already set forth, looking into your personal protection or the face coverings and other equipment that you might be thinking of using or acquiring to ensure the safety of not only your employees, but the general population as well. I was like, did you order them already? Did you order them already? It took, I think I've mentioned this before, it took about 4.5, almost 5 weeks to get a thermometer that I wanted so that I could keep more than 8 inches away from another person.
Yep.
And so, if you have an event coming up in 3 weeks and you're not prepared with certain aspects, you're going to be kind of scrambling at that point. And we already know events in general pre-COVID are stressful. Add COVID, that's another layer of stress. Being able to be prepared is another layer of stress that you really don't want to deal with very last minute.
Yeah, it's true. And that prepared plan aspect, that I'm ahead of the game, I have these things now, will help when it is time to do an event. When you have a small wedding, when someone says, hey, you know what, we are going to move forward after all, and can you deliver this, or can you be there for 3 hours for that, whatever it is, you can have an easy yes or no because you have this compass and you have your actual stuff that you need to show up, your masks, your gloves, your whatever it is for you that you might need.
Absolutely.
Your thermometer, right? Whatever you might need. Do you want to touch on training or anything else you want to add about preparedness?
For training, it's really, I would, in Vermont, the ACCD has a lot written out there. There is this response plan template that they have, and it has additional training materials on there. And I would definitely go on there and make sure that you have all that covered. Again, like I said, going through and literally walk through an event the way that you would do it. Write down notes, see where your contact points are, see where you're coming in contact with other individuals at what points, and make notes on how you would do that in the most safe way for you. And also adhering to state and local health guidelines as well.
Yep.
So it literally is just walking through your entire process.
That's right. That's right. So the website that you had mentioned is accd.vermont.gov, and that's where they can get the response plan that you just mentioned. And and everything else, you guys, and everything else. Cross-state travel, what sectors are open, what the rules are for weddings, how many people you can have inside, outside, upside down. Like you can, everything there, accd.vermont.gov. And what about legalities? So actually, sorry, let me back up to training just one more moment, because again, just thinking as my solopreneur self, right, where you're like, I'll make a plan, I know what to do, I'll be safe, right? We need to have it in writing. We need to have it spelled out. If you don't have someone to train, if you're not having to actually train somebody else, at least you should follow all these steps for yourself as if you were an employee. That's my genuine advice as someone who knows what it's like to be like, I know all this. I know what I'll do. it's easier when you actually have a plan in writing for yourself to follow through, to not only have the plan clear, but frankly, to keep yourself safe, right? Because that's really what this comes down to. It comes down to safety and health. It's nothing short of that, right? Anyway, sorry. Legalities.
No, it is. You know, although we have staff right now, and you know, that help us set up events and that sort of thing, so that I don't, you know, run myself to the ground exhausted all the time. But I was doing a lot of this on my own, and even pre-COVID, having this little checklist of things that I need to remember is, you know, part of executing things effectively. And so if you're executing things effectively, or trying to, and as much as possible, do that for yourself. You know, have your little checklist. Remember to do A, B, and C safely, even if it's as simple as that. You know, that anything that you can do to prepare yourself if you are deciding to move forward with providing services during the pandemic.
I love the idea of the checklist, because first of all, it's so gratifying to check things off. But, you know, I use a checklist when I deliver a wedding. I want to make sure I've got every single item that I'm supposed to bring for the flowers. Then when I'm on site, I want to look and make sure, you know, that's when you go, oh, cake flowers, I got to bring those cake flowers over, right? You have that backup. So if we have a checklist, we can use that checklist for safety, right? In the preparedness, we like, do we have our gloves? Do we have our this? Do we have our that? But what we can also do is have that for being on site. Are people social distancing? Like, what makes us feel uncomfortable? And when you check too many of those boxes, we out, right? Like, so this checklist can become a really easy, handy dandy guide for where the line gets crossed.
Absolutely. And that is something that we were discussing prior, is when, or where's that line for you? Yeah. When you're actually physically at the event, what is that line? Where is that line for you? What point do you reach of somebody else's behavior that you are now uncomfortable or feel unsafe in that space?
Yeah.
And how you remove yourself.
So let's touch on the legalities, because I think this is like, they kind of go like this. They just sort of kiss. They're not supposed to because it's COVID, but they kiss like this a little bit. The legalities and the when we bounce, right? So there are things that we need to follow as employees and employers, right? Employees, for example, should all be wearing masks anywhere. That's part of, if you work, you should be wearing a mask. So we know that as vendors, we should expect that we're showing up wearing a mask. What other legalities are we looking at? We're looking at Serve Safe guidelines. We're looking at what else?
At the Serve Safe guidelines, OSHA, of course, making sure that you meet VOSHA or OSHA, not only training, but any guidelines that they're put forth for employees. And this, you know, you'll find on the ACCD, you'll find on the OSHA website that also VOSHA for this particular, for our state, pulls out the majority of their information from, and even the Vermont WorkSafe program pulls all their information from, you know, the federal guidance on employee safety. And it really goes into absolutely everything. So, you know, going on there and making sure that you have your checklists or your items kind of taken care of on that side, so that you're meeting employee safety first. So it's something that we talked about previously. It's the people over profit. We understand, I think most people nowadays understand that any events that are going to be happening this year, it's additional income, because not everyone's going to be electing to move forward. So not focus too much on making sure that you make all this money this year. We're more focused on, if we are going to be making some, let's make sure that we're doing it right. Because, you know, having your employees get infected or sick is going to bring so much more than just their health issues, which should be number one. But also now you're losing out on the employee for who knows how long. You know, the infection rates are unpredictable at this point, and they may not decide to return to work after that if you feel that their risk is too high. So there's a lot of factors in moving forward there.
And each business is going to have their own things to weigh. You know, some people have that lower risk, like me as a florist who can deliver fairly in and out without having to contact anybody, versus someone who has to apply makeup, do hair, you know, be even, you know, I've seen people looking for seamstresses lately, you know, anybody who's really close and intimate with you, they have to have different rules maybe than somebody who doesn't. So everyone has to feel safe and recognize that it's not going to be as easy for everybody to say yes to work right now.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I think we have really touched on all of the things that we sort of had on our list here. I think if there's anything else in my mind, it's just really making it okay for people to have a boundary that is a deal breaker and it's time for them to leave. Do you want to approach that at all? You had mentioned, you sort of said it eloquently when we were chatting before about just sort of, you might have 5 minutes. Let me let you say, you had a little way of saying it, like you might have 5 minutes to remedy this and then we're out of here.
Yeah, if you don't, I said it like, of course, you know, we've been talking about this plan and having a plan for that. And, you know, in the one that I provide, the template that I provide, it has a client acceptance of responsibility, one for your employees and one for your vendor partners as well, so that you can detail out exactly what your expectations are of each other and how you're going to, you know, really attempt to do this as safe as possible moving forward. In that acceptance of responsibility, there is the fact that, you know, even though somebody might sign this, that when it comes down on the day of, you know, 5 additional people showed up, no one is social distancing, they decided not to wear masks, or whatever it might be, that now you're having to deal with as a vendor. As a planner, obviously, that has, you know, so much more involved into it, because it is the client that you've had this whole, you know, the whole time that you've been planning, and now you have to tell them and that they're misbehaving, I guess you could say, and making those adjustments then. But what do you do as someone who is maybe a photographer or somebody who is in entertainment, and that you're seeing people not uphold their end of the bargain, I guess you could say.
Yes.
If you didn't have anything written out that you can refer to, my suggestion to you earlier was just saying, it's like you have 5 minutes to meet state guidelines, and if you're not willing to make those adjustments, this situation is no longer safe for me, and I'm going to have to go. And it's your safety first, you know, your safety first. Think about it as that way. In the hospitality sector, as we know, it's when you grow up working in restaurants and that sort of thing, you always have to put this, like, you know, client's always right, customer's always right thing, not particularly in this sense. So
it's not worth it. It's not worth the humility of the customer is always right if your health and safety is at risk. And again, just speaking to so many of us are those solo biz owners, right? You have, or you know, you don't necessarily have an employee, right? You have someone who helps you. They're not necessarily your employee. You need to treat them like an employee, right? They need to have the courtesy of being thought of like an employee. And the same for you. Would you leave an employee in that situation, or would you expect your employee to leave? Right? Because people need permission from this about a lot of business owners. As much as you can be independent and fierce and strong and know your own mind, you need permission to know what the right thing is to do. And this is a place where we don't have there's no template, right, on this. I mean, your plan's the closest thing we've got. But so we don't have a template on what's the way we do this. Oh, the last time I did a wedding during a pandemic and things got out of control, this is what I did. We don't have that to draw from right now. And so people are not sure. And some people are finding themselves in a situation where they don't feel safe. And that's just the truth. And I'm not speaking only to Vermont right now. I know we have people watching from all over the place, and there are people feeling unsafe and rightly so. And they're worried about, things getting tightened up, and everyone's unsure. So do your best to make a plan that you can be as sure about as possible, including this is the situation under which I leave. So I printed out that email that you sent me the other day, Maricela, talking about like client acceptance of responsibility. I won't read the whole thing here, but the idea is that, because again, you have this in your plan, the idea is they have to, at this point, accept that if you're moving forward with a wedding, 2020 or 2021, COVID might be on the guest list, right? Like it's going to be under those conditions that you're moving forward. So what does it look like for your business? Figure it out now. Make sure they're clear about that they're moving forward during a pandemic and what that means for them. And at the end of this little ditty you put together that I love, your company has the right to deem a situation as an unsafe situation, and for you and your staff, such as guests not respecting social distancing and face covering requirements and other health and safety guidelines. So by accepting responsibility, the client, you acknowledge the right for the company to suspend services indefinitely if contractual responsibilities for health and safety are not being met, forfeiting all monies paid. So this is the sort of language you can invent. You can get a lawyer to help you with. You can play this back 10 times to try to hear all that again. But, but that's the kind of thing you need to make clear with your client. I'm not coming here to mess around, right? I'm not coming here to shoot your 50-person wedding and it's going to turn into 150 people and you're going to be not following rules. And I'm stuck here because, we're under contract, right? That doesn't need to be your life. And the way that's not your life is you make a plan. Can I say that again? Make a plan, make a plan. And if you need a plan, you can just go right over to Eamon Events website. There's a special tab. It's very conveniently labeled COVID-19 for y'all. And that is where you're going to find resources. You'll find a plan. You'll find a quiz to send to guests, to couples. People need to understand what they're asking their guests to do, just like we need to understand what we're asking our employees to do and what we're expecting of ourselves or our spouses, right? Like, we know who you are. You're not some big corporation. You're a person with a business and a spouse who probably helps you. So make sure they know your plan too, right? Make sure they know the plan too.
Absolutely. Be prepared.
Yeah. Anything else you're thinking? Anything you want to end with today?
No, I think not. I've been adding a few blog posts on that same link page. Some of the items that we've discussed here today and we've discussed in the past, and I'll keep adding some more. I do a little bit of research and provide whatever I can to anyone who would want to listen. And there's some additional resources that I usually link up on there as well.
It's awesome. Yeah, your blog post with working during a pandemic employee safety is up. It's got links and all the good stuff. So definitely make sure to head over to eamonevents.com to get some more resources and to get her plan, okay? And if you missed our last videos, I'll make sure to link those, again, someplace in on or around this video so you can watch those. And I have a feeling we'll probably do another one of these next week because there is something new every week, right? So yeah, thank you so much for just being such a good source of information for all of us and doing all this work, and making sure people have a plan that they can actually follow, because in case that wasn't clear, you need a plan now. I'll say that one last time.
You do. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We'll see you next time. See you next week. Bye. Be safe. Bye.